Well, hi guys, it's Emma again. This is part 2. I was going to sort of do one part for each part of the video, but they're getting a bit long. I had trouble condensing the last one down to 40 minutes, so this one's sort of going to be a bit shorter. I've got a bit of 10 by 20 mil brass bar. It's hard drawn brass extrusion, a square or rectangle section, and cut it to length. I've cut it a bit oversized to what the drawing says. I've got a bit more of an idea how I want to mount it to a base. It's going to be a bit more simpler and practical and less likely to come loose than the one in the drawing. So this is what I've done. I've just set this up in the forge or somewhere near on center, and I'm going to face it, and we're just going to face each end and get it somewhere near length, and it doesn't matter very much where the center of it is, as long as it doesn't vibrate too much. So it seemed to be the easiest way to get it nice and square. And I'll just take a light skim cut. I'll fire this up, put the belt back on after we did that dividing job. If we have a look there now, it's not quite cleaned up on one corner, so we'll go a bit further. And that has. So I'm just going to give that a clean up before I take it out. It's nothing worse than having a burr on the centre when we put it back in the other way around. When I've set that up in the forge, or I've just set it up with the marks here, one there and one there, and just to get it somewhere near the same. That's plenty good enough to face something like that. And that's the first end. So I'll do the same again with the other end. So there you go, I'll face both ends. I'll just give this a bit of a clean. Like that. We've got a bit of brass bar. We might just run a ruler over that, see what it measures up to. It's going to be one of life's little mysteries where the ruler went. It's on the drill press. So we've got to be about 90 mil, or the inch imperial, that's about 95.5, something like that. 96 maybe. That looks good. What I'm going to do is just machine a spigot on there and drill it and tap it, and sit it in a nice reamed hole on the base. It's probably the easiest way to do it, and put a cap screw in from underneath and Loctite it all in. That should be nice and firm and solid and hold, and should all be square. The guy who designed this filed this off nice and square with some beer and blue and a file, which is good, and I'd be happy to do that too. But then he put 2 screws in it, and a bit hard to get it to rock and to line up properly. So one screw's going to do it with a bit of Loctite, a countersunk screw. So that's the frame for a start. So I picked up these aluminium sheets. You have a look at, they're in another video. I showed a bit, but just a pack of them at a scrapyard in Tasmania. And I was thinking when I got them that I was going to use this for a base, and to be honest, it's probably plenty good enough. It'd need screwing down to a block of wood to give it a bit of weight, or it's going to fall around everywhere. That was sort of one thought, to make a base. Another thing that I picked up is this piece of hexagon bar that a friend of mine, from a friend John, gave me. And if I cleaned that up, it's just a bar off cut. If I cleaned that up both sides and gave it a good file up, That'd make a nice base for the steam engine. Also make a good paperweight. But I'm not convinced that that hasn't got another use, so we might have a think about that one too. Anyway, we might have a think about that. There's plenty of time, really. What I'm going to do is set this up, and I'm only going to put probably a 3mm spigot on the end of 4mm, and we'll mark that, and we'll set him up nice and neat and on centre, and we might just get in and mark him out next. So there's a few different ways of setting it up on centre. You could use a dead centre between centres, put a centre punch here and a live centre in the DTI to get it right. That's probably a pretty good way. I'm only going to get this about as close as this needs to be on the tool, and if you have a good look here, that's touching there. I'll see if I can zoom that in. So we'll just make sure that we didn't leave any of them loose. This needs to be about 6mm deep to get it the right length. So we might just start the lathe up. So I had a bit of a look. In the box of goodies, and I couldn't find a reamer that was about 8 or 5/16, 8mm or 5/16 or something like that. And I thought I had one somewhere, but it must be somewhere else. I did find a D bit here though that's 1/4 inch, so that'll clean the hole out nice. So if we make it to fit that sounds like a plan, and we can run an adjustable reamer through it if it's not quite right, but I'm really confident that that'll cut on size. So that's what we're going to do, is just machine this one down to 6.45. It needs a bit more off it yet. Well, that's pretty close to size there. It's nice and in the middle. I'm just going to get the diamond file and give that a clean up. It should be about right to length that way. What I'm going to do is centre drill it. Like that, and we're going to find a 4mm tap. So there's a nice shiny new Sutton M4 by 0.7 intermediate tap. We're going to tap it that size. So M4 by 0.7 means that we need a 3.3mm drill. I'm probably just going to finish it, drill it through 1/8. There's an 1/8 drill there. What does that work out to? .2. That's probably close enough. In anything else I would probably would rather use an oversized drill, so I mean, this is the way that I do it and I know I can get away with it. A little bit of an oversized drill won't hurt it, so if you're doing it, well, that's not a bad idea. Same again here, a little bit of length won't hurt. Somewhere for the chips to go, a little bit less likely to break a tap. So that's that done. So this is where the VFD really shines. We come down here to about half speed on the dial. We've got very little power. In fact, we can very nearly stall that. We leave the tailstock unlocked. So we might just slip that out now. So there we go. There's a thread in the base, and that should be pretty close to the right length there. It doesn't matter a whole lot, but it's just a fraction under 90mm, which is what the drawing says. And we're probably going to set this up this way round and bore a hole in the centre and another hole for your two centres go here. That's the next job. So I found a Sharpie and marked some black on that. I do have some marking blue somewhere, no idea where it is. I probably should have found it, but I wanted to get this done, so I've just marked it out with a Sharpie and a set of jetty leg calipers to get the centre line through there. Now I'm just going to mark the marks with a rule and put a nice neat centre punch on it. So I've taken a bit of care to set this up right. This is a good trick if you're setting up to a centre hole. I've just got this collet centre here, but if you've got a Morse taper centre, a spare one, with a centre hole in the end and a point on the other end, if you set him up between the centre hole here and the centre and put the clock on him, you'll find that you can get him pretty close like that. I've taken a bit of time to set that up. I've marked it out and centre punched it, and I've reversed a couple of jaws in the chuck just to keep everything nice and square and flat, and we're about ready to go. So what I'm going to do is bore that one out to 10mm, or I'm going to drill him and ream him anyway, and we'll make the bearing to fit. So that's the next job. And then I'll set this one up and I'll do the same with this, but this is only 4mm. A bigger job than this might need a weight on one side just to counterbalance it a bit, but this will do the job nicely. You know, put a little centre drill in there. So just put a bigger drill through there now. Be careful when you're doing this, especially with a couple of jaws reversed. You don't want to drill into your 4-jaw chuck jaw. That's not a nice thing. We've cleared pretty well and I've checked that a couple of times. If you're not sure, stop and check again, because it's a nasty feeling when it happens and there's not much you can do about it after the fact. Be a bit careful when you break through the other side. You don't want it to grab, rip it out of the chuck, but that's come through okay. So that's about 8mm. You don't want to go too big because we've still got to put a row of screws around there. But I'm just going to drill that 10mm. That's plenty good enough, and we can probably run a reamer through there and just clean it up and then make the other part fit. Stop pretty regularly and just make sure you don't hit your chuck jaw. Probably they got a few dings already, but you don't want to have to say that you were responsible. So that's 10mm. Looking at that, that's not a bad finish hole, and if we clean that up, I think that's going to be plenty good enough. So I'm happy with that. Now I'll go ahead and set this one up and drill it 4mm, and we're starting to look like that part's getting towards finished. There's still these 2 holes. There's a couple of formulas you've got to watch out, and we'll talk about them soon. But to get these the 2 steam ports in, you really need to get them in the right places or your engine won't run particularly well. So I'm going to scribe a line there first, the right diameter, just with a pair of sharp dividers, and then I'm going to set this one up and drill it. And there's the other one set up, pretty close there. And we can take the DTI off. It lives up there. It's probably, as long as it's within a couple of thous, plenty good enough as far as parallelity goes, and alignment to the centre line. This one in particular wants to be critical as far as being square through the middle there, and so does this one. That's probably the more important thing than where they actually are, because we drill the ports when the cylinder's in place. So really that's not going to matter. What you don't want is binding, and if your shafts are not in alignment or they're a little bit out of kilter, you're going to get that, and then you're going to have an engine that rattles and knocks if it runs at all. So anyway, I put a piece of packing under this side here just to hold it, and to give it a bit of balance as well, because it's quite a bit offset there. And we're ready to go ahead and to drill him. We'll just make sure everything clears and that we're not going to run into the chuck jaw when we break through. Pull that back out of the way so we don't run into anything. And we'll start the VFD. Centre drill, and we might just run him through 1/8 for a start. A good place to start. The drawing says 4mm. I'm going to have a look and see what sort of taps we've got before we drill him out, and finishing reamers, etc, etc, etc. I think. So I've drilled and reamed that to 4mm. I found something to do it, and I found a bit of 4mm stainless there. I'm going to use that just as a bush. That's a fairly nice neat fit there. So we've still got to drill the ports, but we might call this bit sort of nearly finished for a bit. So there's a progress update so far. We've got this piece, and we've got this piece pivots on there. So next, I guess, is probably to make an axle and a bearing and a base. So thanks for watching, guys, and tune in for the next lot. More soon.